Do you remember this scene from the end of the movie where Bill Murray's character Bob whispers right into the ear of Scarlett Johansson's character Charlotte? From the movie's emotional build-up to the closeness of the shots and the feeling in their eyes, we can tell that it's something affecting and personal. But we can't hear it. It's only for them, and we can only guess. And I guess that what people guess Bob says probably varies. When I first saw the movie, I had an idea of what Bob might be saying to her, but it wasn't in any concrete form.
Oh.
It was merely an impression that could be filled in with alternating shapes of a feeling. Now, I know that a few people have enhanced the audio of this scene and patched together some of what Bill Murray says, but I disregard that, because in the movie's final form, it's presented to us as unknown. So that's what it is. So whatever he did say, I think it must have been the perfect thing. For them, that is. But I ask you, do we need to know exactly what he's saying to her? Is it necessary to look behind that curtain to make sense of all this? Maybe it could help us, though, if we knew. You know, teach us about life, even if it is just a guess. Well, with words that powerful, I think it's worth a deeper dive.
Open your eyes.
I love how we meet Bob. It's like we're waking up from a dream. It's a metaphor for conception, in a way, like when characters emerge from the water. There's a notion of leaving the old world behind, sort of like wiping your own slate clean. Well, if that's the case, then what was everything that came before? Was it just a dream, the illusion of a life? And now that you're awake, what will you do in this new world? I don't know yet. Things are still too foggy, like it must be for Bob. In the way that we see him rub his eyes as he looks at the city lights and signs, he's still not fully conscious yet, and he questions what he sees. He sees himself, but it's for an ad he hasn't done yet. So it's like his dreams and this new reality are still not fully separated. Sometimes waking up is a slow process, when the dream world and the real world kind of coexist for a brief time. You know that feeling? It's simultaneously fascinating, but kind of frightening too, because you can't trust your own senses. But it wears off, and you begin to focus. And I think that's what the movie wants us to feel. But we're all alone.
Do you ever feel like you're just floating around in space and there's no one there? I mean, no one there to check you, or I don't know, I mean, there's no family or friends, or I don't know. Do you ever feel crazy?
I do. A lot. Not always, but a lot of the time. I feel like that right now, which is what inspired me to write about this movie in the first place. Now, as depressing as this state can be, I actually take comfort in its feelings sometimes, because it's at these times that I feel as much myself that I will ever be.
Be myself? I am myself!
These hands, they're small, I know, but they're not yours, they are my own. I'm sure Jewel would be thrilled to know that some dork on the internet is stealing her lyrics to make a point, but she put it so nicely. So it can be kind of a mixed bag of emotions. Do you ever feel like that? A kind of reverie, but sadness too? It's in these moments, though, that if I do make a connection with someone, that's when the connection feels the strongest. Everyone else becomes white noise.
Lip my stocking!
Hey, lip them, what?
This is Bob and Charlotte. But just as I would, they would have to be open to it too. They would have to want it, need it. And that means flipping the switch on their radar to the on position every once in a while. You know, this reminds me of characters from other movies who are similar. There's Joe and Patricia, Peter and Joanna, the narrator and Tyler. These characters meet in an almost vacuum, but they make a connection that's well beyond small talk and everyday casual conversation. There is something shared, spoken or unspoken, but it's there. And if something like that happens to me, I might not know how or why, but we feel alive, lit up. There's nothing quite like the feeling of being incongruous. I've never liked the idea of fitting in, but as humans, it tends to be important for our survival, something that is ingrained into our DNA, I guess. So we want it, whether we like it or not. But there is something to be said about being on the outside, looking in. It's a unique vantage point. You study things more. And I think we can sense this about both Bob and Charlotte, especially Charlotte. Throughout most of the movie, she is set aside as an observer, existing with everything else, but not necessarily interacting with it, just looking. She tries to have conversations, but she can't understand the other person, or they don't understand her.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
We get this with her husband, just as Bob with his wife. In a way, the person they are supposed to be closest to is actually the furthest away. So Bob and Charlotte have essentially fallen into the same boat, but there's no moment of her waking up like we get with Bob. Instead, we get this as our introduction to Charlotte, but we can fill in the gap, maybe. This is actually what opens the movie. So is Sofia Coppola saying that the story will be revealing? Candid? Yeah, I don't know what this means, but it does get your attention, I can tell you that. I can also tell you that Charlotte is just as lost as Bob is. So when they see each other, it makes sense that they can recognize something in each other, something that makes the other feel familiar. I think this kind of thing can be easy to spot. It's like coming across someone else in the Matrix who's also taken the red pill. And that's what they share. At first, this kind of connection can make people fast friends, both rebels against the state. That's the spark. But it's their kindred spirits that keep them together. Like the title says, they're lost, but spiritually, not able to make sense of where they're going or where they've been. The only thing that is clear is where they are. They have certainty, but only with each other. Everything else is chaos. But as unstable as these times in life can be, I think they can be the most mentally stimulating of times. And I think this must be what Bob and Charlotte feel. Because with everything and everyone else in the world muted, that makes thoughts and experiences so much more vivid and bright as a result, like Technicolor. But they both can't sleep, remember? And that's their devil in the details. They've become too awake, too aware, and I think maybe the movie is saying that these hyper states shouldn't last forever. It's almost like sensory overload, and if left open too long, you can become vulnerable to things you don't want to be vulnerable to. You can hurt each other, and I don't think they want that. So maybe it's time to go back. As monotonous as the real world can feel at times, it does give you protection of a kind.
Woke up this morning feeling fine.
We knew this was coming. Whenever two people meet in a story like this, the time inevitably comes when they have to return to the life from which they came. Life is fleeting, ultimately. There's nothing permanent about it. From soup du jour to boy bands to the people we meet and the people we love. With contemporary terms like BFF, I get the impression that others feel the bonds we make should last forever.
Forever.
But I don't agree. I don't think every bond need be till death do us part. In the past, I've had friendships and relationships, but it's all of the past. I don't see those people anymore, and I'm okay with never seeing them again because what we had, that connection, has faded. Now, I know that sounds like a stark and limited philosophy, but I do my best to stick with it because I feel that if you live too much in the past, you don't have a future. People and the connections that bind them can be just as ephemeral as life itself. They're transitory, like rogue satellites, orbiting only so long as it takes the gravitational pull of life to fling them back into outer space. Mutual attraction brings us together, but time always separates us. For Bob and Charlotte, this is that time, and I can't imagine a future where they would see each other again. Would you want to see them together again? I wouldn't want to. I think it would subvert the entire time they'd spent together. No, this is it. It's bittersweet, but it's still sweet. Like Rick and Ilsa will always have Paris, so will Bob and Charlotte always have Tokyo. But being aware doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It always does, right? They know that. That's why it's so hard to say goodbye. In life, I feel like I struggle against the inevitable, and I feel that that's what they're going through right now, too. So they want to avoid it, and I don't blame them. They don't want to admit that what they've experienced means that much to them, because admitting it means feeling it. It means feeling that void left behind in the wake of something special. And that can be a big emptiness to fall into. So it's easier just to turn away and pretend it doesn't matter. I guess we do this to avoid pain, like denial becomes the path of least resistance. Isn't that peculiar? We humans are creatures of contradictions, but somehow we've survived. It's really kind of a miracle.
It's a miracle!
But now we're at that moment that got this whole thing started. Scarlett Johansson's ear. So what is Bill Murray's character saying to her character? Bob has the advantage of wisdom and experience. He can reflect back in a way that Charlotte can't. Plus, their relationship has come to resemble, I think, something almost like a father and his daughter, which is a very specific type of relationship with its own unique brand of communication and sentiment. So if I were to guess what Bob says to Charlotte here, something that would wrap up their entire relationship and all the time they spent together into a nutshell, into something that maybe hints at advice, and maybe teaching us something about life, something that would maybe be the perfect thing to say, it would be this. No matter what, for relaxing times, make it Centauri time, okay? Now hold on a second, don't jump ship on me yet, because I know how ridiculous that sounds, believe me, but I'm being serious. Just let it sink in and think about it for a moment. In our collective minds, Bob says the perfect thing here, but you can't capture the perfect thing in words alone. It's like trying to write the best song in the world. You can't. It's too subjective and there's too many variables. But you can write a tribute to it. And that's what this set of words is. A tribute to them. And a memento of their time spent together. It's a cheesy product tagline for whiskey with barely 2 lines in it, but peering between those lines, I hear something like this. Life doesn't always make sense, but we try our hardest, and we hope for the best. And I think some things should remain ambiguous. Just like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, remember that? It's whatever we wanted it to be. And that's different for all of us. Just like this moment here. But this is what I want it to be. Something that's right out there in the open, plain looking, and because of that nearly skipped over. But simple though. And maybe just a little poetic if you look at it in just the right way. Well, that's what I think anyway. What do you think? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Should I? Okay. Hello?
Hi, is this Adam?
Yes, it is.
This is Sofia.
Sofia Coppola? The writer and director of Lost in Translation? That's Sofia Coppola?
Yeah, that one.
Hi.
I'm calling to tell you that I saw your video about Lost in Translation.
You saw my... How could you see my video? I'm still in the middle of making it.
That's not important right now. What is important is this. Everything you just said about my movie...
Uh-huh.
...was wrong.
Oh. Yeah?
Yes. So it's really about the fundamental idealism of the exotic underbelly of the transmutable empathetic reasoning resonating from the surge of the current of the existential happenstance, due in part from the quantification of the construct inherent to the flux of the de-evolution apparent in the realm of possibilities.
It's about all that?
Obviously.
I'm sorry.
You should be. And here's some advice. Stop misinterpreting people's movies, you pretentious bonehead! Hi, is this Adam? Of Adam's Real Life? You parked your car in a no-park zone. Can you please move your vehicle? No one can get out. Thank you.